It's Monday. We're starting a brand new week here on Bakes on Things, and I think we need to address a few of the things that have been going on over, let's say, the last 3, 4, 5 days since the Northern Perspective put out their interview with Pierre Poilievre. Because here's the thing, liberals, you've been sold a lie. You've been sold a false caricature by our mainstream media. For years, a well-oiled liberal comms machine with a chorus of friendly pundits from CBC, CTV, Global News, Globe and Mail, Toronto Star, you name it, has tried to convince you that Pierre Poilievre is somehow Canada's Donald Trump. That he's angry for the sake of being angry, that he never offers solutions, and that he's so unhinged, he's now attacking the RCMP to push conspiracies, like we talked about in yesterday's special Sunday episode. This morning, we're going to actually replace the cartoon Pierre Poilievre you've been sold by the false mainstream media with some reality check. We're going to show, with evidence, that Poilievre is far closer to everyday Canadians than the Laurentian elite that's run this country like a private club for the last 10 years, and we'll show that his ideas are mainstream and practical, and that the frenzied effort to brand him as unstable is a deep tell for each and every one of you, because he's been getting far too close to the truths that they don't want you to know. The insiders don't want you hearing any of these truths, and they don't want them exposed. Let's go.
Welcome to Bakes on Things.
Welcome back to Bakes on Things, the first sip. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and of course, join our conversation down below here on a Monday. Here's the biggest smear. Pierre is just Trump in a blue suit. The reason you hear that line over and over is that it pulls well with liberal focus groups, not because it's actually true. Even commentators outside of our own country, outside of Canada, who actually looked at Pierre's platform concede that the comparison is mostly stylistic in nature and in effect patently false. In fact, Vox, which is not known to be a conservative outlet, concluded that while Poilievre sometimes uses similar anti-elite language from time to time, his policy program is actually far more mainstream than Trump's and is focused more on housing, affordability, and getting government out of your way on your daily lives. In their words, he's the kind of populist people like the U.S. middle and undecideds had wished that Donald Trump was. The Economist said the same thing even earlier. Canada's supposed Trump is far more in touch with the average person and worker than Donald Trump himself is. You know what's not Trumpism? Promising to cut the cost of new homes by axing the federal GST on them, and forcing Ottawa's infrastructure dollars to actually build housing instead of press releases and carting in fake modular homes to pretend like something is actually underway. That's practical. That's competent. That's Pierre Poilievre. That's who the man is. But Canadians are hearing a whole side story and cartoonish villain ideal that is totally false, especially the people who've been clobbered the most by a lost decade of runaway prices. They're the targets of this Liberal campaign. Reuters reported that young Canadians, particularly men 18 to 34, have actually now been leaning toward the Conservatives on the strength of Poilievre's concise message: build more homes, stop the bleeding at the checkout line, and end the performative government that talks, and that's really all they do. While your rent happens to double at the same time, your mortgage payment doubles. When a 24-year-old says, "We've tried it for 10 years and it doesn't work," that's not Maple MAGA. That's just a kid who can't afford first and last month's rent still. That's not okay, and that's Poilievre's message. The "he's just angry" falsehood is another lazy argument by the Liberals, a lazy argument that lacks an ounce of truth to it. Let's be honest. Canadians are in fact angry, just like you might claim that Pierre is. Are you not angry in the situation we are in? You're paying for more groceries, for gas, for a place to live. You're paying more than at any time in living memory. Real wages have not kept up. Violent repeat offenders boomerang through a revolving door. It would be weird almost sociopathic not to be angry about the state of Canada as it is today, would it not? So Pierre Poilievre's tone is not out of place. Poilievre's tone is not a personality tick. It's a mirror of most of us. If you want a prime minister who pats you on the head while you sink in your life, well, you've had a decade of that now. You've had two. If you want someone who treats your problems like the emergency that it actually is, you'll take a little righteous fire from the leader from time to time, won't you? And I would hope you'll measure him by whether he couples that fire, which I know irritates you for some reason, though we all have it, with actual fixes. Poilievre has forced the Liberals' hand to cut the carbon tax. We saw that before the campaign even began. That carbon tax inflated everything from lettuce to lumber. Now he is demanding a balanced budget to stop pouring gasoline on our inflation problem. He wants to actually unleash home building for both homeowners and renters by tying federal money to permits and completions. He has said many times he will scrap that GST on new homes up to $1.3 million for everyone, not just first-time home buyers. So builders build and families can actually buy homes again. That is a real program with plans for execution. That is not just vibes. And why won't the Liberals copy that one? Because you will own nothing. It's becoming so true. Now let's talk about the so-called media frenzy over the last 3 to 4 days over Poilievre's calling out the RCMP's leadership and Trudeau-era scandals. We're not going to spend a ton of time on this, of course, because we did do a whole episode on it yesterday, but here's what Pierre actually said in his interview with Northern Perspective. Pierre said that the RCMP's leadership is despicable in how it handled the Liberal scandals, that SNC-Lavalin probably involved criminal code violations by Trudeau, that the Aga Khan private island vacation breached all the rules, which it did, and that these should have been things that involved potential jail time. Now, he didn't whisper it, wasn't hiding it, he wasn't masking it, he wasn't assuming they had a small audience, because they don't. He said it plainly on camera. The reaction from the establishment was immediate, theatrical, and basically entirely comical. The RCMP commissioner, of course, insists that there was no interference, and he even invited Pierre Poilievre to discuss his remarks privately. The public safety minister, of course, came out quickly and condemned Pierre as deeply irresponsible, warning he was undermining trust in institutions. But here's the thing. That's what they splashed across the headlines, because that's the part the insiders want you to hear. But here's the part they'd rather you didn't revisit in your mind. Canada's independent ethics commissioner, I should say, found in black and white that Justin Trudeau broke conflict of interest rules with the Aga Khan trip, accepting prohibited gifts, including private helicopter travel, while the Aga Khan's organizations had ongoing government business with the government of Canada. That's not a blog post. That's not a YouTube channel. That's the official Trudeau report from the federal commissioner. Why won't the media tell you this? Read the conclusions yourself. It's there. It's visible to you. Contraventions of sections 21 and 12, among many others. In the SNC-Lavalin affair, the same independent office issued the Trudeau 2 report, including the Prime Minister contravening Section 9 of that same act by using his position to seek to influence the Attorney General on a live criminal prosecution. Again, this is not partisan spin. This is not an accusation. This was found to have happened. It is the formal finding of Canada's ethics watchdog. So when Poilievre says scandals should have involved jail time, he's putting a prosecutorial edge on something the public record already established. Trudeau broke the frickin' rules twice on matters serious enough that any ordinary official or ordinary citizen like you and I would have been marched through the system for. The only debate left is why the criminal side never followed. Why? Why was it put away? When a Liberal-dominated committee shut down the RCMP commissioner's testimonial on S&C questions, Canadians were told to forget about it and move along. Nothing to see here. But Poilievre won't move on, and probably shouldn't, because you shouldn't either. Because if corruption like this is let go, it will never stop. It will just continue. That's not unhinged. That's what accountability sounds like after years of gaslighting. If you want to know why legacy outlets reflexively jump to discredit the forum or the messenger themselves, consider the structural incentives that were given to our mainstream media. Ottawa erected a $595 million media support package with tax credits and subsidies doled out to qualified but multiple media outlet organizations, on top of the refreshed CBC cash they've doled out. The policy community trumpeted it as salvation. Critics warned it would entangle newsrooms with government priorities. You don't need a conspiracy to see how that can warp coverage. It already has, and it continues to do so today. All you need to see it is common sense. When a politician who threatens that funding, and all of that funding model for that matter, also threatens the cartel of gatekeepers, the knives come out. That's why. The result is exactly what you've witnessed so far in the last 4 or 5 days. Don't address Pierre's actual facts, attack his sanity. Don't cover the meat of the S&C and the Aga Khan, litigate his tone of voice. Don't debate his housing plan line by line, roll your eyes and call it Trumpism in Canada. But the public isn't buying it like it used to. It's hard to buy a mainstream media you know is bought off. Why? Because Poilievre doesn't just sound like you. He actually is closer to you than the people calling him names are. He was adopted by 2 school teachers and grew up in a home that nearly lost its footing when rates spiked. That's why he obsesses over mortgages and inflation. He's been through it with his family and his parents. He married an immigrant who fled a socialist implosion. That's why freedom isn't a slogan for him. It's family history. He built his political reputation not at Davos, and not at Davos's cocktail hours, but by doing his homework and grilling ministers line by line in committee, like a guy who reads his bills and balances his checkbook himself. And the contrast with Liberal leadership is unavoidable. Justin Trudeau said publicly he won the lottery, being born into wealth. Was that you too? I don't think so. He disclosed a $1.2 million inheritance before he ever moved into 24 Sussex. There's nothing wrong with being privileged in this country. There is something very wrong, though, with pretending that perspective equips you to feel the vice tightening on families scraping together their rent and mortgage payments. Mark Carney is no different. With millions in investments and millions in disclosed conflict of interest, I mean, I don't recall hearing the guy buying zoodles and Alphagetti at the Circle K for dinner saying, wow, that privileged multimillionaire really seems to get me. Do you recall anybody in the grocery store struggling to buy their food saying that? That multi-million-dollar banker we instilled really seems to get you? So let's make this concrete. On housing, Poilievre says stop the performative accelerator funds and pay to announce photo ops. Tie federal infrastructure dollars to actual home building with a simple formula. Build more, get more. Build less, get less. He pairs that with a GST elimination on new homes up to $1.3 million to cut tens of thousands from the price tag and kickstart supply where Canadians actually live. And for all Canadians, not just new home buyers. Those are levers Ottawa directly controls, and they would move dirt tomorrow if he did it. Don't take my word for it. Watch him make the GST pledge on camera in Vaughan like we saw during the campaign, and read the plan spelled out in plain English during that campaign. It was all there. On affordability, he says, balance the budget, stop printing money, and axe the carbon tax completely as it piles costs onto everything that moves. And he means completely, not just the consumer carbon tax. You can disagree with the last point on climate grounds, but you cannot deny what it does to your grocery bill. Even Vox lists repeal the carbon tax and build more housing as his true core. Those were his mainstream promises. We remember that. That's the opposite of no solutions, though. If you're going to sit there and tell me he never offers solutions, you're full of it. Now ask yourself, why does an establishment that yawned through repeated liberal ethics breaches insist that this man is the one who is dangerous? Ask yourself that. Why would they say he's dangerous? Why are we told that calling for basic accountability undermines our institutions? But using the Prime Minister's influence to lean on the Attorney General about a criminal prosecution somehow didn't undermine those institutions? The independent record is not on their side. The Trudeau report and Trudeau 2, whatever you want to call the second report, are not YouTube rants. They are the official verdicts of Canada's Ethics Commissioner. The only reason the Liberal message machine needs to call Poilievre unstable for saying the quiet part out loud is because he threatens to reopen those books, to pull the cabinet confidence curtain back, and to end the special pleading that kept insiders safe for all of these Liberal years. You don't have to like Pierre's style, by the way. There are conservatives who don't like Pierre's style. But you don't have to like that style to admit the substance is long overdue in this country. You don't have to vote conservative to admit that the smears don't match the actual facts here. And if you're a lifelong liberal who's been told this man is a menace, you owe it to yourself to compare the actual two pictures. One leader who treats government like a personal playground and got caught twice by independent ethics rulings, and now one who treats the world itself like his flight playground, spending billions of dollars on Canadians' money, or of Canadians' money, while traveling, spending your money nearly weekly to circle the globe without any results so far, and another one who may scowl more than you like, but who is laser focused on building homes, lowering costs, making streets safer, and breaking the cozy arrangements that have left the public paying for other people's mistakes. The first two of those examples, they're what we've had and have. The third is what this country needs, and that's Pierre Poilievre. The truth about Pierre Poilievre is very simple. He is not the caricature you've been told at all. He's not an imported culture war avatar. He's a Canadian conservative with an unapologetically practical agenda that aligns with what families talk about around the kitchen table. That's why young Canadians, who, by the way, pollsters will sometimes tell you are a supposedly liberal base, have actually been giving Pierre Poilievre a serious look on cost of living and housing especially. That's why the backlash to his RCMP comments focused on tone, not the underlying record or even what he was saying, because those were facts he was sharing. And that's why the same old network of insiders is working overtime to make you afraid of him, or just randomly angry at him for no apparent reason. Because fear and anger is all they have left, and they know it worked once with Donald Trump. If you strip away all the labels and judge by results and plans, Pierre Poilievre is not just a credible option for Prime Minister, he's likely the best option to restore accountability and affordability after a decade of drift. You don't need to love every word out of his mouth to recognize a man who does his homework. That's the reality. He speaks plainly, and he wants government to serve citizens again, not the other way around. That's not radical. It's normal. You might not like the way he says it, but that's Canadian. And that's the reality the smear machine can't afford for you to see. Don't forget to join us this evening for The Last Word. Thanks for watching Bakes on Things, The First Sip. I know this was a bit of a longer one. Thanks for sticking with me. Don't forget to join the conversation down below about this. What are you saying? How are you talking to your liberal friends and family? Are there any liberals out there that can tell us the story of how they've flipped on this? Because I know that I have actually talked to a few in the last week or two that have flipped on this. I want to hear from more. Let's have this real conversation down below. Enjoy the rest of your Monday, and we'll see you at 5 o'clock tonight.